Good evening and welcome to the South County Fire Board of Commissioners regular board meeting for June 17, 2025. I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Ask everybody to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, board members, you see in front of you the draft agenda. And Chief, we don't have anything else for the agenda? No. Anything else for the agenda? I will move that we approve the agenda as presented. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Wittes. It's been moved and seconded to adopt the agenda. Is there any discussion on the motion? Any discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. All right, that takes us forward in the agenda to item number 4, which is the introduction of our new board member, our Edmonds liaison, William Morris. And Liaison Morris is on the Zoom with us tonight. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening.
Well, welcome to the South County Fire Board and representing Edmonds. And Liaison Morris, could I have you just say a few words of introduction about yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do for Edmonds.
Yeah, so I started as a police officer with the city of Edmonds in July of 2019. I've been with the department for almost 6 years now, and I'm currently assigned to the traffic department. Previous to that, I served 4 years in the U.S. Navy, and then have had other career things that I've done. I worked at Intel for a little bit in their clean room, and then after that, worked for Puget Sound Energy as a commodity specialist before becoming a police officer.
Well, great. Well, we welcome to the South County Fire Board, and we look forward to having you here in person in July, and
Yep.
looking forward to your contributions and representation for Edmonds.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. All right. That moves us forward then in the agenda to item number 5, which is the consent agenda, which contains 5A, the payroll summary and authorization for May 2025. And item 5B, the June 17, 2025 claims vouchers totaling $2,706,120.89. I will move that we authorize those items, approve those items in the consent agenda. Is there is there a second? Second by Commissioner Teofilak. It's been moved and seconded to adopt those items in the consent agenda. Is there any discussion on the motion? Any discussion on the motion? If not, I'll move to a vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. That moves us forward then to approval of the meeting minutes, item number 6 and 6A, which is the June 3, 2025 work session special meeting, and also the minutes for the June 10 work session. Sorry, the June 3 is the spring workshop special meeting, and the June 10 is the work session meeting. So I will move the adoption of those two sets of meeting minutes. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Fernhoff. So moved, seconded to approve those meeting minutes. Is there any discussion? Any discussion on the motion for those two sets of minutes? If not, we'll move to a vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. That moves us forward in the agenda to item number 7, which is public comment. We'll start first in the room, then go to our Zoom platform. Is there any request for public comment here in the room? Any request for public comment here in the room? If not, let me turn it over to Ms. Blankenship to ask, do we have anybody on our Zoom platform that is requesting public comment?
We do not.
Ms. Blankenship, thank you. I'll come back one last time to the room. Any requests for public comment here in the room? Not seeing any. Thank you. That will conclude then public comment, and we will move forward in the agenda to item number 8, which is the fire chief's report. And good evening, Chief Eastman.
Good evening, Chair Kenny and the rest of the board, the public liaisons, and I forget, is it Mr. Williams? Sorry, Mr. Morris, welcome. I look forward to having a conversation with you when you get back in town. So it'll be a briefer Chief's report. I guess it's always the best part of my job when we get to promote somebody and new leadership in the organization. I've known Tanner for quite a while. He was promoted the first of the month. Will be a great asset to the captain ranks within the RFA, and I'm looking forward to see what how he progresses in his career. And I see him as a future chief in this organization before he's done and retired from this department. Next slide, please. Fourth of July is not that far away. You'll get a bigger brief on the first with regards to some of the other things that are happening and the IEP and some of the work that we're going to be doing to gear up from the fire department's perspective on the 4th. But the parade's at 12 o'clock on Friday, the 4th. And again, we usually get pretty good turnout from commissioners that want to be part of the parade. If you're interested in that, I'm going to say you can reach out to me, Christy, and make sure we know who's coming and we get you in places that you want to be within the parade with the apparatus that we have there. I think I plan on being there. I know a couple of the other chiefs plan on being there, and we'll have the normal engines and medic units and transports. I'm sure the air light unit will be there too. You know what? I don't know all that information. I know, based on the conversation you had before, Commissioner Farnoff, the intent is for the Rio to be in the parade. To be honest, I don't know where they are with that. And Christy and Sean Marie and a whole bunch of folks have way more information. What I want to just make sure the commissioners, it's always a privilege to have you in the parade with us, and wanted to keep it on your radar. And if you're interested in attending, please let us know so we can make sure, one, we get you in the parade before we leave, and make sure we get you in a place that you want to be as we go through that. Next slide, please. And again, we still have free yard signs to pick up. Y supplies last through the 23rd to the 28th of this month. Right now, station 17, 11, 22, 76, 19, and 15, or we have station signs there for folks to pick up, and they're the small little, look like a campaign sign that says fireworks are banned. So again, just to make sure for folks that want it, not just commissioners, but for folks online that are listening, if you want a sign, it's those stations, and feel free to reach out.
Chief, can you say those station names, numbers again?
Sorry. Yeah. Station 17, 11, 22, 76, 19, and 15.
Great. Thank you.
I just got an ordinance that was passed by the city of Linwood the other day. So the city of Linwood passed ordinance number 3479, which implemented the TIF. They passed it on the 28th, which meant it went into effect the 1st of June. And so we will continue to monitor that, and I don't even think CFO Bothwell knew that I received that yet. So staff will continue to monitor. We'll based on all the conversations we've had, there's some things that we're going to want to monitor, and I still need to talk to CFO Bothwell and keep us appraised. It's the first TIF we had in the RFA, and I think we'll watch this one and look at the impacts and the rest of that, and make sure we're keeping our eyes on the ball with that, and we'll probably have future conversations, at least in Chief's report, to give you an update of what we're seeing, where we're going. To remember, it actually takes effect as of the 1st of June. So we'll keep you up to date on it, but I wanted to let the board know I've got formal notification from Linwood that an ordinance has passed, it's signed, and so the TIF is officially in effect. One last thing is, I think if you recall, and I don't remember when we exactly had this conversation with the board, that staff is going to look at our risk management perspective of the RFA, and who brokers that for us, and do our due diligence. And we were going to do that this year. Well, we've been doing that work There's more to be done from staff side before we bring something to the board. Our intention is to bring something hopefully by the work session in July. I do know that we've received a few emails on the topic and some of the board was on those emails. Staff's still doing our due diligence and doing our work on the side, and we'll give the board a full brief. We're looking at the work session in July on where we are, what we've done, how we got to where we are, and where we anticipate we need to go in the future. So if any commissioner has questions that they want answered now, feel free to reach out, give me a call. You can give CFO Bothwell a call. But we will provide a formal brief to the board at the work session in July on the topic. And that's what I have for the chief's report. I don't take any other questions.
Questions from the board members for the chief on the chief's report? Any questions? Chief, I did have a question for you. On the TIF, we're going to need to come back to the TIF issue from time to time. So I just want to be sure that you have somebody that's monitoring that in the sense that there was implementing, if not legislation, they were implementing actions that Linwood needed to do because this was going to help provide some of the money for their project, but whether they could actually find the other monies that would actually make it go, it was contingent. I mean, it was a brick in their foundation of what they wanted to do. But if these other things don't come together, like certain other grants, while the TIF authority might sit out there with their authorization, it may not actually happen. So, well, I mean, I'm confident the board will want to come back to that issue at different points in the future. So I just encourage you to have somebody that's like overseeing or keeping an eye on that issue because we'll want to at least know when things are happening. There may be opportunities to influence or potentially leverage that in the future. I'm not sure how, but I just feel like there might be. So I just encourage you to make sure that we're tracking that issue.
Yeah, well, I like I said, staff's hearing this for the first time tonight too, so I haven't had a chance to talk to staff. I think there's a couple different ways we need to watch it. I think if they start doing construction and doing the work, we're going to know because of the fire marshal's office and the fire code work that we do. That's one aspect to know if they're actually moving forward. I don't know what those other pieces are, and I think I have a conversation coming up with the mayor here real soon, and we've been having very open and honest conversations and transparent conversation about the topic, and I can ask and keep that conversation going. So I'm not exactly sure how we're going to do that, Commissioner Kenny, yet, but I think we will stay on top of it because I think part of it is we understood based on the report that we received from the consultant from the city of Linwood, and we understand the legal ramifications and how the law works around it. Now we actually have to figure out how it actually functions. And there's other pieces, right? There's work that the county assessor's office is going to have to do, and we need to make sure that they're actually doing that. I don't suspect they won't. And so I think there's a couple different places that we're going to have to watch this just to make sure how we understand it to be working, it's actually working that way, and or if we have a misunderstanding, correct it and have a conversation about what that is. So more to come on that.
Sounds good. Any other questions for the chief on the chief's report? If not, thank you, Chief Eastman. That moves us forward then in the agenda to the item number 9, which is the union report. And I see we have President Pat Moore on the Zoom call with us. President Moore, good evening.
Good evening, commissioners. I didn't get to talk with you guys after the meeting or the workshop meeting in June. And just wanted to thank you guys for the invite and allowing the union to have some participation and some input in that. It was much appreciated, and it was I thought it was a very well meeting. Went well, and there was some good discussion, and look forward to our future discussions maybe on NFPA 1710, what that looks like for the organization. And other than that, I'm just looking forward to potentially some positive changes that might be coming to the organization as far as employment model and whatnot. And outside of that, commissioners, I don't think I have too much else for you unless you have any questions for me.
Any questions from the board members for President Moore? Any questions for President Moore? No requests here. Thank you, President Moore. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. That takes us forward in the agenda to item number 10, which is unfinished business. And we start with 10A, which is the organizational roadmap for adoption with Chief Eastman.
Good evening again. I don't have I know the presentation we provided at the last meeting and is in your packet. And I know we provided a lot of information. If you go back to the spring workshop, the meeting, I guess the overview we had at the last meeting. And I guess I want to make sure that the board, if they have any additional questions or want any additional information from staff specific to the organizational roadmap, what was presented. I guess what I'd like to say is the roadmap is kind of a blueprint. And it's not the, as we ask you to adopt the roadmap, it's more than just what you see in the PowerPoint. It's the last 5 months of work we've done together, and how we've had a conversation about what the future looks like. And more important than just what's on that as of today, because remember, it's static. It's a space and time, is the work that and what CFO Bothwell has described as us coming back to the board as part of the budget process. And then early next year, after the budget's adopted, we go into 26 and we go and look at the organizational roadmap again and look at what's changed, what the realities are, update it, have the continued conversation. We see this as just an ongoing conversation that starts shortly after the first of the year and continues through the budget process. And I see us taking the month of December off from the conversation and probably the first or second meeting of January, and it being a continued conversation about the organization, where we are, what the future looks like, not necessarily the immediate future of next year. We're looking at what the future holds and rolling it back, so we have a constant conversation about, where staff's looking to go and the conversation that we have with the board. And so we can plan and strategize and figure out how to resource and all the other pieces that go along with that. And so, as I look forward to the board adopting the roadmap, I want to make sure we all understand that it's a work in progress. This is a place and time of what you see now. We anticipate working on it from staff on a very regular basis, updating it frequently when we get known information from the assumptions we put in. And I think more importantly, we look for the continuing conversation with the board as we look at this organization and we grow to the future and meet the future needs and demands that I think the citizens expect us to have a plan to meet, and continue that conversation. So with that, I'll pause. And if there's any specific questions that any of the commissioners have, I've got everybody here that will be more than happy to answer any questions that you have.
Questions from the board members for Commissioner Fernhoff.
Thank you, Chief, for that. And thank you, CFO Bothwell, and all that have been involved with communicating with the board. I think moving forward, just some changes, dynamic changes that are going to be external influences and internal influences. I would hope that you continue to keep this dialogue going. Even if we don't have an agenda item through your chief's report, if you could bring to the attention of the board any modifications. We have an expansion of our AC roles here, and welcome aboard, sir. Appreciate you being here. And as we go forward, as we know that the influences of the potential for Everett to come on board, Michael Hill to come on board, changes in federal policy, changes in grant programs, all of that needs to be brought to our attention in some capacity, so we at least are aware, and we may not necessarily have an action item towards it, but I would at least appreciate that dialogue to continue, and I really appreciate everything that's been done to date. So thank you to everyone.
Other questions for the chief? Board Liaison Kircher.
Thank you. I have three major issues with the proposal. The first one is that there's this NFPA number, which says we should have 5.5 firefighters per 10,000, say. I'm not sure exactly, but there we're currently at 3.9. There's no real, you guys haven't demonstrated to me how that number connects to us and what the basis for the NFPA studies were to get to that number. for example, are they basing it on a centralized distribution center for deployment, a decentralized or isolated? And how would that distribution of forces impact the number? How does it relate to population density? And how does it relate to population distribution for an urban, suburban, or a rural station? So like, I feel like you've called us like an urban or more modern fire department, but I haven't really seen what the definition of that is for us. And I haven't seen how it connects to that NFPA number.
So refresh my memory, were you here during any of the meetings when we presented the 2020 studies done with the iChiefs, the International Fire Chiefs Association? Back in 2020 did a study defining different size departments, different demographics, also showed the numbers based upon population per thousand, how many firefighters, not recommended, but how many firefighters in those size departments that they currently were on average around the United States. So that's where we got our data from, was that data point done by that study. And I'm happy to produce that for you and send that to you.
Yeah, I think it's just that there's minutia in that study, and there's different ways that they're measuring and determining that, and how it's comparing to, say, like a fire department or a station in Snohomish County out in the middle of nowhere versus Seattle Fire Department. Like, I don't know, it's not clear to me how we fit and where the sweet spot is for us. to
Yeah,
do
so
that.
there is a sweet spot for us as a metro-sized fire department of a mixed department of combination and professional firefighters that 350 and over for your size of department for personnel. And then I think you're in a range of about 272 fire departments across the nation. And then from there, it gives you recommendations based upon your call loads, your call types, percentages, and everything that you need to staff.
Okay, I would love to have all that information.
Sure.
Second issue is just raising the levy lid to 1.5%. Because I didn't hear any evidence of how the jurisdictions that are creating the precedent to raise to 1.5% are related to us. So like, if there is a jurisdiction that's having a budget shortfall, like a neighbor of ours, I could see that them might needing to increase their levy to 1.5, but how do the districts that are using that 1.5%, how do they compare to us? Because just because they're doing it, I don't see that as a reason why we should be able to do it. We should demonstrate that there is a need to do it.
So I'm not sure, I guess I don't understand the 1.5. I'm trying to,
So I think it's called the levy lid. It's on one of the sheets of the roadmap.
yeah,
We're currently at a 1.2.
so we're at $1.29 equivalent per thousand.
And then we want to go to 1.5 by 2031. And during the work session, it was brought up that we all, or that other districts were at 1.5%. It was kind of used as a precedent for why we should get there. And I'm not.
So I guess I'll say that, so what we did, and again, so if we didn't say we need to get to 1.5% and work backwards from there. What we looked at is what we felt we needed to do because we have, in part of the conversation we had, we needed to have additional firefighters per position because of the sick leave and some of the changes that have happened in statute. And the fact that we have far more people on sick leave today than we did, let's say 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago. And I want to say HR Director Cullen presented that early on in the conversation. And so part of what we were doing is looking at the needs of the organization and what we actually need to have. Part of it based on the conversation we had with the board as the organization enrollment started and went through. We looked at the administrative staff needs. We looked at the operational staff needs. We also, if you remember, we reduced the GEMT reimbursement by 50%. We also in 26 took out, 2 grants that equate to about $800,000 because of the current state that we're in and the federal dollars and some of those things. And then looked at how we could manage adding firefighters that we've identified the fact that we need over time, and then anticipating the capital facilities plan and building infill fire stations in the future, and we needed additional firefighters to staff it. So we did that work. And part of showing where over that time, based on the assumptions we provided, showed that with that, what we presented, with the assumptions that were there, that if we did the work we said we were going to do, we bring in, it's 80 additional firefighters, 7 additional staff, reduce the GMT dollars by roughly $4.5 to $5 million, reduce in 27, reduce the COA grant and the North Sound grant, which is a total of about 800,000 in 26. Keep those programs in place. So we kept the expense, got rid of the revenue. And to do that, based on the assumptions we bring forward, if you look forward to 2031, and again, we're looking 6 years ahead of time, and there's always danger in predicting the future, is it kept us at right around, at the time, we increased the cost per thousand, because actually we're increasing resources in the RFA. And we at the end, we were at $1.50 in 2031. And so we didn't go say we need to get to $1.51 because of everybody around us and worked it backwards. We actually started from the front, worked where we went, and said, okay, here's the next 6 years. We can actually manage this. And then at the end, looking at what the cost associated with that was. And I was happy to say that we were able to do that work with modest growth in AV, with the reductions of resources that we've identified, and we were staying, at or close to $1.50,000 6 years out. So that was the premise behind it. It wasn't the target. We should be at $1.50,000. And how do we get there? That's not how we did it from our side. If it looked like that, or it sounded like we presented, I'd apologize for that. And so that's where that came from. It just happens that everybody around us currently is at $1.52 or greater. I think from the work we did with Edmonds Town Hall. So I don't know if that helps explain. It's not necessarily explaining how do we get to $1.50, but it shows how we got there based on the needs that we did identify in the conversation over the last couple of months with regards to the organizational roadmap.
And just to try to, I'm getting my head wrapped around your question just to try to answer a little bit directly. You're talking about maybe the sparsely populated rural areas. And we can get you this slide. We have a really good slide showing that, obviously a dense metro area is going to be busier. That's inherent, right? But right now, where we're at with our taxing is much closer to extremely small volunteer, sparsely populated areas. And we're not, the densely metro areas are actually over here, and we're much closer over here. Just trying to use your comparison a little bit. And we can get you that slide because it's actually quite dramatic.
I think just to remark, just for dialogue on that one point, and thank you. I think that it is how it came across, just Chief, about the 1.5%. That was how I read it at that meeting. But if you're going to go from a 3.9 to a 5.5, that's over a 20% increase in staffing. And if you're going to go like this year from 30%, or for 30 people to add to 300 roughly deployment, that's a 10% increase. So then what are the citizens of Mount Lake Terrace in the region? Are we going to get a 7-minute, 12-second response time at 80%? I just don't see where like, and I agree per Pat Moore and the other conversations that there needs to be some kind of increase, it seems, but I'm just not seeing where the benefit is for anybody aside from hiring more people.
Well, so if you look at the first round of hires, it's to maintain what we currently have. I don't think, when you look at the number of people we have off and the way, and again, it's happened over time. It's sick leave is being used very different than it was 9 years ago, which requires us to have more people hired to do the same work. So the reality is in the organizational roadmap, the people we're hiring to start isn't to increase service demand or increase service. It's to maintain what we have because we have not enough people to cover the operational shifts we have in the station. Right? So unfortunately, there isn't a direct relation to, for example, the 30 people that we're going to add to the budget in 26 or the potential 10 we hire in 27 or 28, because it's about level setting where we probably need to be for staffing as a result of the changes that happen in the state of Washington. Now, the last 30 people hired in the organizational roadmap is intended to fill an infill fire station, which will have a direct result on service delivery. It depends on which station we build. There's another conversation about timing with the funding goes along with the capital facilities plan. Right now, the easiest station to build first is the one at the old single at Manor, our Manor property up here. We've owned it for a long time. It'd be the easiest to develop versus Alderwood Mall Parkway because they're talking about widening the road. We have to coordinate the efforts with them. And then we're still working on the purchase of the Valley Village property. So the last 30 people is for a new fire station, which will add resources, which will help response. We didn't talk about that specifically, but it will add service delivery. So the first people we're hiring is people we need because of the changes that have happened over the last 5-10 years with regards to how people use sick leave, presumptive changes in statute and stuff, that doesn't actually have necessarily a direct, like I'm not able to put other resources in the street as a result. Now I will at time because if we have extra people on duty, because I don't have for as many people on sick leave this day or this week, I will be able to add additional resources, which will have an impact, but they won't be resources that we put on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because our minimums are staying the same.
I just don't see from last week, I don't see a data point which would say hiring 3 people is going to solve your problem of people not being there versus 20. Like, there's no measure for oversight or for anything for them to say, okay, well, this many people aren't calling in sick, or we're able to cover this many people calling in sick. There's no metric or measure for us to know whether hiring 30 people or 3 people is actually effective.
Well, we do have a measurement on, I mean, I've seen the data that we ran over the last year for our sick callouts. We average 11 off sick per day. So, I mean, we can get all that data for you out of Jennifer Pardee, who runs that and keeps those systems for us that we monitor. And then also too, taking the factor that we used per firefighter that I just sent you this study, Everett's at 1.75 right now, 1.75. Shoreline, that touches our other border, is at 1.95 per thousand. And we're sitting just a little over 1 per thousand. Our call load's higher than each city by a significant amount, and our wheel turns are probably way heavier than they are. So we're doing a lot more with a lot less, and that's probably reflective in some of our response times as well. So it would help to have more people on the street and more units in place.
So I think there's probably additional conversation to be had. And part of this is, and maybe it's me just being in the game for as long as I've been in. We historically have had a multiplier. We have a 4 platoon system. We historically have needed about 4.25 people per position to staff the positions in the company, that allows for vacation and sick time. And that was based on information, I'm going to go back to 10 years ago. We were averaging 4 people off a day, right? And so you still need to hire a few more people because we have 4 shifts. So for every position, you have to have more than just the 4 people assigned for one in each shift. We currently have people staffed at about 4.5 people per position. We're just talking on the company now. And as a result of the work and that CFO Bothwell, Director Cullen have done, we know 4.5 is not cutting it because I have overtime very, very frequently. And I have mandatory overtime very, very frequently because I have, I'm allowed 13 people off on vacation every day. And if we average 11 or 12 on vacation, that's 23, 24 people that aren't coming to work. If you take the number of people I have assigned per shift and the debit days that they come back, I always am short the required 64 during the day and the 70 or 72 during the day and the 64 at night. I don't have enough people coming to work to staff that. We may not have articulated that as well. And part of it may be just because I've done it along. So I apologize about that.
But I think, I mean, I appreciate what you're saying and I hear what you're saying totally, but I think there's this number of 11 people. Seems like a quantifiable, measurable number. And the things that you're saying sounds like a quantifiable, measurable number. And those are the kind of things that I would want to be able to evaluate how making all these hires is going. That's my problem is I'm just left to have faith in you. And I do. I think you do a great job. But it's I want to have the data so that if a taxpayer wants to know why we need something, then we can show them what that data point is.
Yeah, and I think that the ongoing conversations that we have will continue to rebring that forward, right? So as we move forward with, and we take the 18, convert them, hire 12 more, brings us to around 5 people per position, we'll be able to reanalyze that and bring those data points back to you like we did at the beginning of this and continue that ongoing conversation to determine, right? Because I think at the end, when we had the conversation, it was somewhere between 5 and 5.5 is probably the sweet spot, but we don't know where the sweet spot is. The reality is I can't hire that fast anyway, right? It takes to get people through the academy, get people on probation, it takes time. So we will continue to have this conversation with the board. It'll be part of the ongoing conversation of the roadmap to keep addressing exactly what you're talking about. And maybe we realize 5.2 is where we need to be and we don't need to go to 5.5 and we can move from there. So, and I know Director Collin has something to add.
I did present some data as I think the first step in our org roadmap process. And it was just dedicated to vacation and sick leave, which doesn't account for the other reasons that people might be off, like training. So there's a whole host of reasons why folks might not be in their seat space on the line. And yet we have to make sure that somebody's in that space on the line. And across at least those domains, without the training factored in, roughly about 30% of the time across ranks, across levels of tenure, people are out for some legitimate reason related to sick leave, vacation. If we imagine that South County Fire was a single person, one firefighter, and we had 4 shifts like we do now, we'd need 4 people to be fully staffed. But if those people each missed 30% of the time, we'd actually need 5.2 people to be fully staffed on the line all the time. We've been operating somewhere around 4.4, 4.5 in terms of our hiring. We do have a fudge factor because we overhire in preparation for people who might retire. So there's always this kind of slush back and forth. But in terms of budgeted positions and staffing factor, we've gone with a number that's ancient and low and likely to result in us either not having people or having overtime. The numbers we presented in this org roadmap for the next year look more like about 4.8, not 4.2, not 4.5, and not the 5.2, which is more likely what our minimum need is going to be in the medium term. And we can give you that data. I don't really have the training data, which would only make it look worse, if you will. But I do have tons of data for about 2 years, 2 full years, across the organization of line personnel and what we really know to be our experience in terms of people being away from their spot on the line.
I'm totally following you. I think maybe in addition to just wanting to have it quantified and have it more like something that you can track, I think part of it too is it's the switching from the different measurements or ways of just showing the measurement from, like you're saying, I'm following you with your 5.2 and your 4.8.
If that makes sense. And you know, it isn't just sort of, I'm sorry, preparing for the kind of staffing factor needing to grow and modernize. We're also looking at deployment changes that put slightly more folks actually on the line. So it's a combination of the two that are giving us what looks like a surge in the next year. And some of it really isn't a surge because we already have those people because of the kind of overhire, prepare for retirement. So the numbers can look really huge depending upon how you look at it, or somewhat modest. So we should find some time offline, break that down so it makes sense to you more mathematically and doesn't sound like different ways of describing the same phenomenon.
Commissioner Rowland.
So what we're approving tonight is just broad stroke plans so that we can start doing strategic, decisions as we go through the next 4 or 5 years. There's nothing in this that marries us to any of these numbers, that makes anything mandatory, or that gives you guys a blank check. So in that respect, I'm comfortable with moving forward tonight with what we have. That having been said, it is jarring, as I said at our last meeting, that we will see the average homeowner paying 50% more in 6 years than they are now. That's turning up the heat quickly, and I think it's going to have consequences. Whether or not it is substantial or not, I don't know, but it's just going to be hard to tell. The other thing is looking at this, watching our ending cash balance go up 75% in the same time period. These are numbers that are going to be used to beat us, whether it be in the newspapers or at the ballot box. And we need to be able to, as we're moving down this line, justify every step of the way that we're doing. And I know that that's what we do as an organization. We hold you to the fire when it comes to budget time. Expect a little bit, maybe more fire holding, since now we can see this clear path that we're walking down and what the impacts are going to be. So I just ask that you do your homework, and I know you will. The other thing that I would point out is that, if you're saying that we're going from, what is it, an average of about 4 more people out sick every single day? We went from 7 to 11 to here, or I know way back you said it was 4.
Well, yeah, so I
But
think
let's
it's,
just say in
I
the
think it's
last
changed
5
over time.
years, or last few years when the legislation changed, we can see that. And 4 people being gone a day, if I'd love to see the numbers of where we're tracking for overtime this year, because I thought it was overly optimistic maybe in the budget for last year, and I hope it wasn't, but I'd like to see where that's tracking, because, if we're paying 4 people in overtime every single day to fill these shifts, I know there's shift trades and things like that, but 4 people in overtime a day, that's 6 more headcount to what we currently have. Or we can keep the current headcount, which isn't enough, and have people being worked probably more than they should. Yes, it's extra money for them. It's great in the checkbook, but we know what the stresses of the job do. Look at the hair of our senior staff some days. It takes a toll. It ages you just on the front lines, let alone in leadership. So I want to make sure that ability to have work-life balance is there, and it's not something where people feel like they have to come into work because people are out sick. I do also want to say that I think we need to start having conversations with jurisdictions similarly sized to our own, both in the fire side and in the law enforcement side, because I believe that a long-term solution to this
the sick leave law is for some minor changes to be made that allow us to ensure that it's not being abused, which we don't have now. And I think that's something we really need to push for in the matter or in the interest of public safety. So I would like to see some maybe refer a conversation of that to our government committee to start seeing what we can do to lay the groundwork and build the, I know you probably had conversations. I did when I was in Washington DC with the chiefs that were there. Yeah, I think that we're trying to solve this. If we can get some more guardrails down the road, maybe we don't have to staff up quite as much as we're looking at, but given the infill station, given everything that's facing us with attrition, I think it's prudent that this be our, let's call this our worst case scenario, hopefully. Our highest number scenario. It could be higher if unforeseen occurrences happen, but if this is the worst case scenario and this, we're being very conservative and it keeps us around the numbers of our neighbors, I don't think it's unreasonable.
And Commissioner Rowland, I want to spotlight, and I spotlight every time, but the quantitative is really easy for us to talk about, but the qualitative, we talk about the challenges of recruitment and retention and burnout. You know, when we looked at the staffing, you know, this is tied to recruitment and retention. This is tied to customer service. This is tied to the performance on fires and cardiac arrests by staffing properly. So I just want to highlight, because you are speaking to that, but that's a big part of this too, beyond response times.
And if we are improperly staffed and people are getting overworked, that's going to increase people taking sick time because they just need a day to decompress, or they've just had it going hard for a few weeks between training and doing their shifts. So always want to keep the human element in mind when it comes to data analysis as well.
Other questions? Commissioner Wittes.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to go back to that number you're talking about that's out there. I know back in 1980, that number was like 3.3. And it's gone up every time. I believe the contracts with the cities that we had, that was 4.58 or right in that area.
4.582.
Okay. And so that was how we calculated the people back in those days. And that was, what, 10 years ago or more. But that's what the cities paid for, because that's what we were doing here. The other thing about like the deployment, you know, when you look at the response times that were out there, one's Edmonds and one's our whole area, southwest area of ours, not Edmonds. And you can see the response times in the southwest area are not as good as the rest, and that redeployment should change some of that stuff. It's sad that in the fire service, we don't have many indicators that are out there to make us good or to compare. It's NFPA, which I don't want to put it down, but they come up with the numbers, we live with them, and cardiac arrest saves. And we do good on cardiac arrest saves. Getting the numbers of 1710, I think we're doing good, and all we can do is do better. Once we achieve that, then maybe we can look at, now we don't need to go as many people and, you know, don't need the money. I know when I started in the fire service, we had to run at $2 a thousand. I know I kind of beat you up about that a few times, Chair. And if we can get by at $1.50, that's just amazing to me. And that's really where it's at. And when the chart he was referring to, I brought that with me just because I was impressed with it down at Edmonds. It shows that the agencies lower than us is Darrington, Oso, Hat Island, Lake Rossiger. They charge just a little bit less. Everybody else in this county charges more than that. And that's where that $1.51 came from, which is the next one up, which is Marysville Regional Fire Authority. It just shows kind of where we are in a spot. Doesn't have any relevance to what we collect or anything else, but it can show that this is where we sit. We're not at the top end. We're not at the bottom end. So I feel pretty good about that. Again, looking at those numbers that you said for the next 30 years, it does increase. And everybody's getting tired of taxes increasing. I know that very much so. And that's just all I want to say. I'm just supportive of it, especially the redeployment. And again, we'll see how it turns out. But that's all we can do is try. Thank you.
Other questions? Commissioner Rowland.
Just one last point, and this is a point I think I brought up before, and I know I definitely brought it up during the conversation with some of the citizens of Edmonds, is there's very little control we have over response times. We have increasing population density, increasing density on the roads. We can't widen the roads. The things that we can control is, we can't even really control how fast we drive. If the roads are wide open, we still have to, drive safely. But with congestion there, we can't control our speed to the location and time. It's time distance, or I'm sorry, speed times distance equals time to get there. The only thing we really have to control is maybe the seconds it takes to get to our rigs, which we try to address, but really can't go much further without starting to get into areas of now it's unsafe because people are just running around the firehouse like there's a fire. Probably the wrong way to say that, but this is something that we're going to have to deal with. And we can only ask the county or ask your city or other constituent cities to build wider roads or to take more steps to allow us to get there quicker. But short of building more and more stations, doubling our numbers of stations, we could probably bring our numbers down significantly. But that again wouldn't be something that we can stomach. So I think while time is very good because time is lives saved, our ability to impact it is limited. So if we're going to be using that as a metric, we should be using that as a metric to drive us to be having conversations with our partners about the challenges that we're seeing. Maybe it's even law enforcement about people not pulling over, things like that. We can have those conversations, but to be using it as if we spend this much money, we're going to decrease time. Again, unless we're building more stations, that's just not how that metric works. So.
Other commissioner comments, questions? Oh, sorry. Yes, sorry. Commissioner Chan, go ahead. Commissioner Chan, go ahead. You're muted. Commissioner Chan, unmute.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
So I am in China, so I'm using UPN to come across here. So it would take them 30 minutes to find my place and arrest me. So I think a couple of things that we need to talk about. We're not talking about, I think, Commissioner Rowland thinks Bill Station. I've been long advocated, have basically renting a place and more in backfill stations. Okay. But I don't like the idea to tell the problem, well, nothing we can do. It's just a moral, blah, blah, blah. We need to show that the cities, we're making all different steps to trying to get a response time up for whatever reason. So I would like to see that, but also I think we have talked about a lot. I've listened to every one of you. I think maybe this is a really good at the start that the HR and Finance Committee can take on the initial study on this number, at least rough it out a little bit rather than so detailed up in the whole board matter. And then we submit to the board and for the further discussions.
Great.
I don't know how you guys feel.
Thank you, Commissioner Chan. Other questions, comments? I did want to say that I am supportive of the organizational roadmap. I think it kind of charts a course, the different pieces of it that will actually come out in the budget, or in other pieces where we're actually going to implement, essentially legislate and create it. But this is that roadmap that kind of provides the guide. We're going to Yellowstone, but the exact road we're going to travel there is not yet set. That's to be set. We just know that's where we want to go. So it's that kind of idea. And my guess is things will change along the way as the economy changes or as laws change. But at the end of the day, one of the things that allows us to provide better service to our customers, the residents of and people of South County Fire is more personnel on the street to deliver that service. And we can talk about being faster or better quality, but part of it is also quantity. And that's the number of people that are able to provide that service. And this takes us some steps, or it sets a roadmap to take steps in that direction, which I think makes a lot of sense as we want to provide more service, better service, and sets us in that direction. Will we get there? It's dependent on a lot of other things to be determined, but I like the thought that has gone into this, the historical perspective, the looking into the future, and doing the best we can with a crystal ball about where we want to go to make South County Fire better and provide better service to our citizens of South County Fire. And so I like where we're going, and I'm supportive of the roadmap. Do I like every last thing in it? Maybe not. But do I like the package? Yes, I do. So that's just my comments. Any other questions or comments? Then I think we are ready to move forward on the issue. And Chief Eastman, in terms of a motion in support of the roadmap, are you looking for just something as the board approves of the roadmap, or requests the
said-
chief to implement the
I
roadmap?
said
How do
the-
you want that
I
to?
said it for the board to adopt the roadmap,
Adopt
and the reason we chose that term very specific, because kind of like you eloquently said, Commissioner Kenny, it's kind of like the map. And it's a static look at where we're going based on a lot of assumptions that we've talked about and things. It kind of sets the baseline for where my budget's going to come from in 2026. But again, that's all subject to the additional information we get, and that will then be tweaked appropriately so, to make sure that the revenues and expenditures and all that stuff go. So we chose adopt because that's not policy at that point. It's kind of like a guideline. It's a static that we're going to bring to you, have a continued conversation, hopefully for the next 20 years in this organization. And so we chose adopt very specifically for that purpose, because it is not a blank check for me to go do what I want. It's the place and time where we can launch from. It'll help inform the 26 budget based on the conversations we've had. And then we all know that we're going to start this conversation over again in early 27, and then again in early 28, and throughout. I mean, again, we'll be having this conversation continually. So adopt the organizational roadmap would be the resolution I would recommend.
Commissioner Rowland.
Would you be opposed to us inserting the word non-binding or advisory in there? Just to make others comfortable with this not being binding.
I personally don't think you need it, because the bottom line is it doesn't give me any spending authority. That's what the budget does. So I think, so personally, I think if you adopt it by principle, it's doing the same thing. I don't think we need to, I think, for me, if you say non-binding, it waters it down, because we did a whole lot of work over the last 5 months, and it was a collaborative. I mean, I'm really proud of this, or as the fire chief of this organization, the fact that staff and the board had a conversation, and this is as much the board's roadmap as it is staff's roadmap based on the conversation we had over the last 5 months. I would prefer we don't water it down with that, Commissioner Rowling, because I think by what we've already talked about, it doesn't give me authority to do anything, but it does help inform, and you shouldn't be surprised if there's additional personnel in the 26 budget as I present it, because we've had the conversation this year.
All right. And then I would move the adoption of the roadmap.
It's been moved, and I'll second, moved and seconded to adopt the organizational roadmap. Is there any discussion on the motion? Any discussion on the motion? Commissioner
Yeah.
Chan. Commissioner Chan.
Yeah, I agree. I agree, but the numbers still can really more study and what the accurate number is, right? Now 5.4, 4.5, whatever it is. I think that need to be a more study on that.
I think there will be more study on that, Commissioner Chan. Other discussion on the motion? Other discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously.
On behalf of staff, thank you very much. And thanks for the work that was done from the board's perspective, because it was a lot of meetings and a lot of time. And in my opinion, probably some of the best discussion we've had in my time here at South County.
Chief, thank you to you and your staff. I want to say that's like 6 months worth of work there. So it's significant. Thank you very much. Okay, that moves us forward on the agenda then to, let's see, that was 10A, 10B, which is the funding guiding principles update for consideration by the board. And this is with CFO Bothwell.
Thank you,
Good
Chair.
evening.
Good evening, Commissioners. So I have the next three items on the agenda, and they're all sort of similar in the sense that we've talked about them over the last few meetings. And tonight, we're just seeking consideration of action on each of them. So the first one, and I'll start with just a quick summary of what we talked about before and then see if there's any questions. So the first one, the proposal is to update the funding guiding principles to align with the organizational roadmap funding strategy. There's 4 components to this update. The first is we would add a guiding principle to maintain the fire and EMS levies at 80% of their maximums. The next one is a recommendation to ask voters for periodic lid lifts when levy capacity is forecasted to fall below 80%. The third is a principle to attempt to maintain the benefit charge at a levy rate equivalent between 20 and 40 cents. And the last one is to balance the annual budget with the benefit charge. And distinguishable from the last item, there is a document in your packet that is the funding guiding principles. And it describes exactly what they're going to be used for, and that's for forecasting and to provide some triggers of notification for the board of certain milestones. And so we are asking you to consider approval of this tonight. And you approved the guiding principles in the past with just a simple vote. There's no resolution in your packet for this. And so we'd be looking for something similar tonight. And I'm, of course, happy to take any questions.
Questions from the board members? Any questions from the board members? If not, then I will move that we approve the updated funding guiding principles. It's been moved and seconded to approve the updated funding guiding principles. Is there discussion on the motion? Any discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see, that takes us forward then to item, that was 10B. We move on to 10C, which is the 2026 budget calendar. CFO Bothwell.
Thank you. So the proposed 2026 budget calendar is modeled after the 2025 budget calendar with 2 important modifications. The first one is that the roadmap accountability that there's been quite a bit of discussion about earlier tonight. The reporting on that annually was added to the calendar and for presentation in August, and it does include a discussion of the staffing factor and overtime analysis, which has also been talked about tonight. The second one is the presentation of the chief's preliminary budget was moved up 2 weeks. In the past, it's been presented at the first meeting in October, and we're proposing to do that the last meeting in September. So those are the 2 modifications compared to last year, and this is another item that we are seeking consideration of approval on tonight.
Any general questions from the board members on proposed 2026 budget calendar? If not, I'll move adoption of the 2026 budget calendar. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Rowland. It's been moved and seconded to adopt the 2026 budget calendar. Is there any discussion on the motion? Any discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Great, thank you. That moves us forward then to item number 10D, which is the Comprehensive Financial Management Policies update for adoption with CFO Bothwell.
Thank you. This third item is the proposal to update the comprehensive financial management policies, and this is consistent with our annual review and consideration of updates. We're proposing 5 updates. The first one would increase the general fund ending fund balance target from 90 days of operating expenditures to 120 days. The other 4 proposed updates affect the healthcare self-insurance, and the proposal would create 4 new policies. That would establish a fund balance target for the self-insurance fund, would define the budgeting process for self-insurance, would define criteria for rate setting, and would require periodic actuarial reports on the sufficiency of rates to fund future plan expenditures. And just like the others, we're seeking approval on this item tonight.
Any general questions from the board members on this subject? If not, I'll move adoption of the 2025 updates to the comprehensive financial management policies. Is there a second?
I second.
Second by Commissioner Wittes. So moved and seconded to adopt the 2025 updates to the comprehensive financial management policies. Is there any discussion on the motion? Any discussion?
Yes.
Commissioner Chan, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Yes, I like the thing that move back up to 90 days cash. I think that's very conservative. And also that was showing that to everybody that we're financially strong and reserved, and we can at least, come to any type of economy downturn or whatever it is, which is critical for our organization.
Thank you. Any other discussion on the motion? Commissioner Rowland.
I just also wanted to add that I believe that with the end of the contract in Edmonds, I think you brought out a really good point about when our monies are coming in, and this is just a prudent thing to do to avoid some perfect storm coming along and us being in the negative when we can avoid it. So I think it's the right course of action.
Any other discussion on the motion? Any other discussion on the motion? If not, I'll move to a vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously.
Thank you all.
Great. Thank you, CFO Bothwell. All right, that takes us then forward in the agenda to item number 11, which is committee updates. And that starts first with Capital Facilities Committee, Commissioner Lawrence. Commissioner Lawrence, can you hear me on Zoom?
Yes, I can. Okay,
Okay, go ahead.
here's a note from the meeting. Brian Harris with TCA is continuing to update costs on the plan to include Station 76. Updated costing should be completed in August and ready for the board discussion. Staff will continue to work with Brian to create a construction timeline. And also things are moving along with Value Village and the Alderwood Mall Parkway project property is being taken care of. Nothing to talk about there. And of course, Station 22 is moving along. So the one thing that we did talk about was when and how the discussions for funding our capital with the bond issues that we'll be discussing. The staff will have all the necessary information for the board in August, and at our next long work session, the staff will be bringing that to the board. That's it.
Thank you, Commissioner Lawrence. Let's see, next up is Finance and Human Resources, Commissioner Chan.
No, actually, Geoflex is the one to.
Commissioner Giafleck.
I think as we said last week, no meeting this month.
Okay, great, thank you. Then we have Intergovernmental, Commissioner Wittes.
Thank you. I believe we have a meeting tomorrow. Pardon? 10 o'clock? Okay. 11? Okay.
Great, thank you. And that leaves us then lastly with Snow 911, Commissioner Fernhoff.
No meeting, no update, but 911 still works.
Good, good. All right, that moves us forward in the agenda to item number 12, which is commissioner comments. Any commissioner comments? Any commissioner comments? I was going to, Chief, I was going to mention during the organizational update, but I didn't want to confuse the issue because kind of tangential to that. But thinking into the future with the various comments I've seen, particularly in the last week, where the federal administration may close down FEMA, it makes me think about emergency management and our piece in that. That's really, in my mind, a regional function. It's a state function. It's not really we're kind of the boots on the ground in a lot of ways that can execute a number of the emergency management functions that might be needed, but we're not really the coordinators of it. But it does make me think about if the feds are going to abandon the FEMA function, that might create opportunities for us, and not just opportunities, but needs for us to make sure that we're able to meet emergency management type. And when I say that, I'm thinking of earthquake in the area of South County Fire or plane crashes and into a school in South County Fire, and there's just, a big mass casualty type incident. And if there isn't going to be FEMA coming to the rescue, then what are we doing to help coordinate, to get help from the state, from the county? Just been thinking about that this past week, and I don't know, it doesn't really relate to the organizational roadmap because it's like one department. But when I'm thinking, but the organizational roadmap looks into the future, and I've been thinking about those future issues, and I'm thinking about that issue, and I'm like, wow, that's really negative for us. But then I was thinking, then there might be some opportunities there for us too. So I just wanted to make that comment to get you thinking about that into the fall. If something really comes to fruition on that, we will need to stay flexible. In my opinion, stay flexible to think about how we respond to that in a positive way.
There are going to be impacts. There already are. Some of the funding is going away, and their staffing is going to be affected by their funding. And we're fortunate. We have a very good working relationship with the director and the deputy director. We've been I've actively participated at DEM for the last 15 years. Was a principal also a principal during the pandemic, a principal during several things. So we're well connected, and I think they're still trying to figure that out. We've had dialogue. I've had dialogue with both Dara and Lucia. I think there's going to be more conversation. I think everybody's trying to figure out what does it mean, and who and what areas of that responsibility land where. And again, I think there's always opportunity. The question is, what does that look like? And the fact of the matter is, if the state's going to do what the feds used to do, and then the counties are going to do what DEM used to do, and then we're going to do what DEM used to do, it's changing a lot of things and moving the pedestal down, and there's funding conversation. And I think there's going to be more conversation, and we'll keep that on our radar to continue to have a conversation with the board about it, because I think there's a lot of unknowns. The good thing I can say is we've got a really good relationship with DEM. And so we've had some preliminary conversations, and they're trying to get their arms around just what does it mean for their day-to-day operations, let alone what happens when the 100-year flood or the earthquake that hasn't happened yet that we know is going to come at some point in time. So more to come on that. It's on my radar, and I think there's more questions right now than anybody has answers, but we'll continue to keep you appraised. And if you don't hear something, please nudge us, just so sometimes we may forget to tell you something. So
Thank you. Commissioner Chan.
Yeah, I thank you for Commissioner Kenny brought up this issue. But one thing, there's no way for funding our manpower equivalent to FEMA. I don't want people to have the misconception that, we'll take care of that. That it is really, I don't want people in general, we are stepping up to replacing FEMA. I just don't know.
Commissioner Fernhoff.
I think some of the impacts from the discussion will, at the lowest level, impact grant-funded positions. So you're going to see emergency management shops, Office of Emergency Management, Department of Emergency Management, regardless of how they label it, they really rely on UASI grants and different funding sources to staff. Those staff positions are in jeopardy or have been released at different levels. King County has suffered a loss, lots of losses at the state level. That's the lowest level in terms of funding. The next level up, when we talk about capability, usually the touch points are programmatic. So for example, if FEMA were to be a boots on the ground, it usually comes in the form of the urban search and rescue system or urban search and rescue program. And in our state here, we're fortunate enough that we have WA1, which has been established for well over 20 years. With that comes talent, but that talent's organically brought to the table by different fire departments, police departments, sheriff's departments that actually make up the team. It's becoming federalized, if you will. And the cash, which is the actual equipment that FEMA funds, is usually held somewhere in a warehouse. In this case, it happens to be in Pierce County, co-located with the EOC down there. So if there were, and the other thing too, to dissolve FEMA, you have to rewrite law. Currently, the Robert T. Stafford Act is what gives FEMA its authority, formed in 1979 and activated in 1980 under Jimmy Carter. That program also includes not just funding to people who are victims of disaster, but there's a very serious component in that when it was formed, it also incorporated civil defense from the Department of Defense. So FEMA's mission is continuity of government as well. So when you hear the phrase, somebody's been taken to an undisclosed location, that little hole in the ground is managed actually not by the military, but it's actually managed by FEMA and a large network of communications. So if they do that, they have to then move one piece sort of legislatively out of what was FEMA, probably under the Department of Homeland Security. And those touch points that reach us at the lowest level most likely will be equipment that will be gifted to the host state from which the teams would normally emerge from. There used to be WA1 for urban search and rescue, and then under the Health and Human Services Disaster Medical System, there used to be DMAT1. I don't know, does DMAT1 still exist? We were debating that the other day. So DMAT is a disaster medical aid team, then you have disaster mortuary teams and also medical surgical teams and overhead teams as well that manage these things. Most of that kind of line item that the FEMA would have paid for, especially in terms of equipment, will probably be gifted. Since the talent already organically comes from the state by which it holds it, there probably won't be any differences. What will be different, though, is who reimburses portal to portal when those folks get activated, when they're deployed, and then they're returned back to their home base. So there will be a lot of pieces that in play in terms of at least that one capability. There are other capabilities that FEMA owns and possesses, which most likely will be devolved over to Homeland Security. Those include the Mobile Emergency Response System, which is based out of Bothell. It's one of 5 capabilities around the nation. Beyond that, it's really a funding stream. So it's going to be up to the states to receive a bucket of money. And then just to update you on how that works, we are identified as a sanctuary state because of the Trump administration's policies currently. Sanctuary states, unless they agree to eliminate certain DEI components within their plan for distribution of benefits, they will be denied funding. At least that was the last conversation. There's been a little bit of a crack in the armor from that position recently, related to some Homeland, it's HMGP, which is the hazard mitigation planning, and some other stuff. They've lightened up on some of these restrictions. So money will flow to a degree, but it's going to be up to the state to be the broker for all subsequent local and tribal entities that are housed within that state to receive the monies. How that will affect fire departments may be directly from things like the SAVER grant program, which is administered by FEMA. So if FEMA takes away that program and SAVER provides to smaller departments or mid-sized departments funding for things like apparatus, breathing apparatus, maybe radios, anything that's needed. If that program is somehow in jeopardy, then that will directly affect fire services across the state. So those are just some of the highlights. It gets much deeper than that, but that's from my profession, that's what I know.
Thank you. Any other commissioner comments? Commissioner Rowland.
I'll just say on that subject, hurricanes don't care what your political ideology is when they come into town. Earthquakes don't either. What's being done in Washington right now with the posturing and the brinksmanship puts a lot of uncertainty into something that we need to rely on to be certain, because when those times come, people aren't going to care who the president is or who's in power or what. They're just going to look at the pile of rubble that was their home and wonder who's going to come to help. We'll do as much as we can at the state and local level to absorb any decisions made at the high levels, whether we think they're idiotic or whether we think that they're you know, just a different way of doing things. But I just, I would say that when we were in Washington DC, we did talk to our legislators about the SAFER Act. These are going to have real consequences to real people. And I don't think it's a responsible way to govern, to take these support systems that, yeah, when we aren't using them, seem like they're a waste of money, but they're there for the worst times. And the one thing that our nation has always done in those worst times, whether it be 9/11 or Hurricane Andrew or the earthquakes in LA, is we provide for the people around us. We make sure that we try to make those areas whole. There's definitely room for improvements in any system, but just throwing the baby out with the bathwater or the decentralization, which we know will add administrative costs all the way down the chain, is not the way to do it. So I know nobody in Washington's probably going to be listening to this little YouTube clip, but I think it needs to be said here, and it needs to be said everywhere. This isn't about whether you support the current administration or not. It's about making good decisions that protect us and protect our future.
Thank you. Any other commissioner comments? Oh, Commissioner Lawrence, do you have, sorry, Commissioner Lawrence, go ahead.
Yeah, Commissioner Furnoff, thank you for the expert detailed knowledge. Remember you took us up to the where they staged for the headquarters for the fire. What was it? What was that called again? The
Bolt Creek Fire.
Bolt Creek Fire. That's right. Now the feds were at the top of the food chain there, right? Because we had our former Chief Redding was running that, right?
That was a incident management team, type 3, that had relieved the type 1 team that came in as the overhead from the federal side. That's correct.
You know, was that part of FEMA?
No, I believe that was probably it was state. Yeah. But was the type 1 team federal team? And the type 3 team was a state team. So you have different tiers of organizations. Sometimes the type 1 teams, which means it's the biggest and the best, right? That's what type 1 is. And then it goes down from there as you go down to type 2, type 3, simply meant that it was mostly probably a national forest team, maybe Park Service, maybe different folks from ag. They would all just make this up. But FEMA has, to your point, FEMA does have these kinds of teams. I served on 3 of those teams in my time. So those teams will be in jeopardy if funding is cut or the organization is released, but they will rely on other agencies to bring in the same kind of all hazard management teams, depending if they come from Forest Service or FEMA or the state has their own as well.
Oh, yeah, thanks a lot, because that was an impressive operation up there. So,
well, I think it's an important to also realize that if there is a decentralization, in other words, a central response effort that is managed by the federal government, and we do have, as Commissioner Kenny pointed out, maybe something that's large scale, multi-operational period. It's not just Alpha side, Bravo side, Delta side. This is a multi-operational period that involves everybody competing for the same resources in the same geographic area. It'll be an extraordinary event that will likely call upon boards like ours to engage in the incident command system at what's called the policy group level, in which case we might have to authorize the chief extraordinary expenditures, modification of work hours, whatever that happens to be in order to meet the demands of the incident. So it may be a good conversation in the future to ask our staff to prepare us in that context of what would we need to know, what kind of training would we benefit by having, and meeting that need should it present itself.
oh, well, thank you very much.
Any other commissioner comments? Any other commissioner comments? If not, we have, up next will be an executive session for collective bargaining pursuant to RCW 4230-140 subsection 4. Chief, how much time are you thinking on that?
5 minutes? I'll be optimistic. Let's do 20 minutes. I think that's a good start and we'll see where it goes from there.
Okay, so why don't we take about, it's about 8 minutes, why don't we take about 8 minutes to 8:35 as a recess, then we'll begin an executive session at 8:35, and Chief, you said 20 minutes? So we'll call the executive session for 8:35 to 8:55, and we do not anticipate taking action at the conclusion of executive session. So with that, without objection, we'll be in a brief recess. Back to executive session. Thank you.